Okay, so when we thought that Sony's finally done releasing their new lenses, they came up with not just one, not two, but three, actually three new lenses. We have 24, wait, which one is that? I even don't know because they look identical. 24, 2.8, 40, 2.5, and 50, 2.5 G lens. And yeah, I've played around with them and I've compared them to the other Sony lenses on like the similar level, and I have some, impressions and thoughts to share with you. So shall we? Hello everyone, my name is Magic. I'm a wedding photographer, Sony Europe ambassador, father of 4. Welcome to my YouTube channel, the channel about photography, weddings, gear, and check this out. I have just hit 1,000 subscribers 2 months after I started this channel, so I'm amazed. Thanks so much to everyone who subscribed, who joined me in this YouTube journey. I hope you won't be disappointed. I'll be celebrating that with like a separate video and a giveaway, so stay tuned for that within the next few days. And now let's just talk new Sony lenses again. So this year Sony has been like killing it with like all these releases, starting with 35G Master, then A1, then FX3 camera, then 50G Master, and I've reviewed them all, like except FX3 because that's not my cup of tea. But all the others I have reviews on this channel, so you can go back and watch them. The links are also in the description. And now we have something else, because we've been hit with 2 lenses so far, which were 2G Masters, like the top of the top lines, and now we have the G line lenses, 24, 40, and 50. These are fast prime lenses, not as fast as the G Master lenses, but are very small and very light. And I kind of think that they're like perfect fits for the new A7C camera. So talking about the design, 3 of them are identical. Let's just take one. So they all have aperture ring that is declickable. There's a switch, click on, click off. So if you want, you can have that smooth aperture change. You have manual focus to autofocus switch, and you have custom button, which is pretty cool as well, in that tiny package made of some sort of aluminum. I think it's very light. It's lighter than all of the other lenses that I've used so far. The material itself, when I got these lenses, they were already scratched after the first persons that tested them before me. So I wonder, is it something that will happen to these lenses, or they were just not treated very well? Not sure. They all have the same diameter, 49 millimeters for filters. The only difference that they have is that they have like different, different lens hoods. I don't use lens hoods, and I don't use the lens caps, so I toss them in my bag as like the first thing I always do. But yeah, so 24, check this out, 24, which one is 24? Come on, like this is gonna be a nightmare to find these in your bag when you have 3 of these. So 24 has this rather classical lens hood, while 40 and 50 has this funky looking lens hood, sort of like a size 35 2.8. It looks so weird with this. I kind of hate it. I prefer it this way. And all of 3, they fit and look amazing on A7 III camera, because this is like the tiny but also very powerful package. And I gotta tell you, like this time I didn't set up like a super, style shoot or anything else. Apologize for that, but I also didn't feel like these lenses are for this. I took them for a walk with my kids. I tossed all of 3 in my bag. I put the camera in my bag, in this, tiny bag, and I could barely feel any weight. And I think that's the power of these lenses. And how did they perform? I had fun shooting with like A7C with 3 of these lenses. It's kind of like I always wanted to have that, one tiny camera that I can always take with me. But then there was like always some sort of compromise that if you get a small camera, you get a small sensor and so on. If you get small lenses, you don't have that, that look. Like all of 3 gave me the look I liked. They all have like a nice background blur at 2.5 or 2.8 with 24. Like all of these photos that you're now looking at were taken wide open, and yeah, it's a pleasure to shoot with them. But also I have to be honest with you, coming back from shooting A1 with 50G Master, like these are definitely not the same level of anything. They're not as sharp as the G Masters are these days, and definitely you don't get that background blur that you have with like the fast aperture like a 1.2 or 1.4. But now to show you the actual difference between these lenses, I'll show you the comparison to the closest lenses in the lines that I found for these 3. So starting with 24G, unfortunately Sony doesn't have any other 24mm prime lens. They do have 24G Master, so kind of not fair comparison comparing 24G Master versus 24 2.8. But yeah, let's look at the images. They're both sharp, but the first thing that I've looked at is how different the actual frame was. The 24G is much wider, especially shooting very close to the subject. So as you can see here, I'm shooting at a very close distance. So I thought, okay, maybe shooting at farther distance, the difference will be smaller. And yeah, it is smaller. Farther you go, the smaller the difference is. And then focusing to infinity, which is what I learned, how they actually calculate the focal length. The angle is quite similar, almost the same, with the difference being that 24G has a quite big distortion, actually shifting the geometry of that lens. Obviously there's no lens correction for this lens yet, as this is just coming out. But now let's go back to that close focusing shots. If you could see at the bottom, can you see how round it gets at the bottom of this frame? So like obviously with such a small lens, there has to be some compromises. Again, it's not fair comparing to 24G Master, which is like exceptional in terms of having all the lines straight, and it's an amazing lens. And it's what, like $1,400 versus $600. So quite not fair comparison. But now if you correct that 24G in a post and crop it, to just fit that correction, it gets way closer to a 24G Master. So yeah, that's really interesting, that difference between those two. Then look at the sharpness, they're both sharp. And then if we look at the bokeh rendering, of course at 1.4 there's going to be like huge difference between 1.4 and 2.8, but also if you compare 2.8 versus 2.8, because of that difference of the geometry of the frame, the 24G Master has like a bigger compression. So you see bokeh balls are quite bigger on that lens versus 24G. But what we get with 24G, we get this amazing tiny small size. Like when you thought 24G Master is small, you take that one of 24 2.8 and it's way smaller. So there's always, some sort of values that you have to put first before the others. So 24G is the smallest, is the cheapest, while 24G Master is the most awesome one, but then way bigger and way more expensive. Okay, so now let's talk 40mm 2.5. So there is no other 40mm lens for Sony by Sony. Like the closest lens that I think like would be fair to compare is Sony's 35 1.8 full frame lens. So of course with 35 you're gaining that aperture 1.8, but the lens is bigger. It doesn't have aperture ring, it doesn't have the declickable switch, and it's not as light as 40mm lens. Image wise, interesting enough, there is less difference for me between 35 and 40. than it was between 24 and 24, G Master versus G. That 5mm difference is less visible than the other difference. Before, because we're gaining that 5mm on that 40 lens, the bokeh balls are a little bit bigger, so it's a very comparable image. Personally, I'm not a 40mm person. I shoot 35 and 50, so for me 40 is neither one nor other. It's just like, that lens that falls in between those two lenses that I use. But if you are a 40 person, I think you will like this lens. It has a nice background blur. It's sharp, fast, and super tiny, small. Okay, and now let's talk 50. So we had amazing 51.2 last week. This one we have completely different beast. Again, what I'm gonna compare it with is gonna be a Zeiss lens 55 1.8, slightly more expensive lens, but it's been there for a while. Many folks have had it, and I think if someone will be deciding which 50 they should have for their A7C camera, they might be looking at those two lenses. So 55 Zeiss has completely different build. It's a metal lens, it's a heavy lens, and check this out, it doesn't have anything on it. It only has, focusing ring. There's no aperture ring. There's no custom buttons. There is no manual to AF switch. It's a clean, nice Zeiss aesthetic without anything around the lens. So that's the first difference. And then 52.5G is actually almost 2 times smaller than the 55. So you could almost fit two of these G lenses in the same space that 55 Zeiss would go. Both lenses are sharp and fast, but what's interesting, the 50G has actual flare when you're shooting backlit straight to the camera without lens hood, because again, I'm not using lens hoods, and I'm a sucker for flare, so I was looking for a flare. So 55 doesn't have a flare. It has like this weird stripe of light coming from the top of the frame, while this 50 lens has an actual round flare. So that's the difference. But then 55, it has like quite big of an advantage in terms of the background blur, especially comparing these two next to each other. 55 has like 5 more millimeters, so the compression is bigger, the bokeh balls are gonna be bigger, and especially when you shoot at f1.8 versus f2.5. But then it's a more expensive lens as well. So yeah, so why and for who are these lenses actually? I kind of think that they fall in the very same category as the A7C. They are not the lenses for a person who already has a kit, like a pro kit like I have with A7R3 cameras with like many G Master lenses. I won't be trading my 55 to that 50 or 24 to that 24, but for someone who is either building their gear, maybe upgrading from their APS-C small compact size set, and they want exactly the same but with full frame, like this set is going to be amazing. For someone who's going to be traveling, or maybe for someone who does street photography, you can put 3 of these lenses with A7C in your bag and you won't even feel any sort of weight, but you will have that amazing full frame look with that prime lens look, which I think many people will enjoy. I kind of think that Sony is really smart here, creating that category that it's kind of between APS-C cameras and full frame, pro cameras. It's like the full frame for more consumer market, like maybe hobbyists, Yeah, I think it's a really nice and powerful combo, and actually using A7C, it's a better camera in terms of autofocusing than my own R3 cameras that I use for my professional use. So this is something like what I told you at the beginning, that I was always searching for that, that perfect camera for a walk, for just, going to for holidays with my kids, that I didn't want to bring my pro gear. This is amazing because this is pro gear in a hobbyist package. So yeah, let me know, what do you guys think in the comments? Are you maybe looking to acquire one of these little tiny bad boys? Let me know in the comments, and see you guys in the next one. Thanks so much.